You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Park Ranger joined back by Steve Helwick. Steve, you mentioned a lot of movement from outside perimeter guys in this game, and looking at how they're going to use those guys to put Houston in conflict, right? If you're going to predict, if I said, okay, Houston wins this game and someone on the defense had like a career night, who's that guy based on how unique this Rice offense is?
I would say that would be the same guy that led Houston in tackles last game, and that's Jalen Garner, who's really stepped out at that weak side linebacker position this year. Garner was kind of buried on the depth chart last year. Houston had good veteran linebackers in Jamal Morris and Michael Batten. Michael Batten especially, who played that role last year. He was Houston's do-everything guy. He was a backfield menace. He was good in coverage. And I think we're starting to see some of those qualities pass down to Jalen Garner as a new starter takes that role. Garner had a great game. He had a career high in tackles against Stephen F. Austin against an FCS opponent. And I think that this is an offense that the linebackers really need to step up and stop, especially those on the outside. I think that this matchup plays into a potential big game for Jalen Garner. I mentioned eye discipline earlier. That's going to be something that he's really going to have to watch, is where the ball's going. You have to predict and read and react really quickly to this Rice offense. So Jalen Garner is going to need to do that in order to have a career game. And once again, Rice did not score a single second half point against Louisiana, and they had a lot of 3 and outs. So what Houston really has to do is they have to stop Rice on some of these initial downs. First and second down, force them into throwing situations on third down, because Rice has not proven the ability to move the ball vertically yet in this offense.
I think Jalen Garner is probably the more central focus as a linebacker in the box. You mentioned eye focus and discipline and focus on getting him into third and long situations. And maybe it's because the big hit he had last week, I am excited to see what Tre Tre, Latreveon, McCutchin does this weekend, because, look, all credit to Louisiana. Formerly Ulala is a program better than they were a couple years ago. Coming off of a good season last year, should say. Latreveon is a different kind of athlete than anyone on that roster. I feel like he could be a guy that makes a big tackle for loss, a big time play in this. Are they just going to option him and not block him? Well, after watching Rice do this now and studying it a little bit, do they have any answer for Latreveon?
I'm not sure. I mean, Rice does offer some unique blocking schemes where you'll see more guards pulling than previous. You'll see more zone blocking than Rice has done in the past. And I think Tre Tre is going to be a tough player to scheme out of this game. I mean, we saw some of those hits that he had against Stephen F. Austin. Houston's defense in general, especially Tre Tre, were just flying around to the ball. It looked like they were playing at a different speed than Stephen F. Austin on the field there. So that was one thing promising about this Houston defense. I think that Houston should be able to generate a lot of stops in this game, and this one's going to go on the lower scoring side, kind of like last year's Bayou Bucket, where Rice didn't score a touchdown until around the final minute of action. But Houston's offense kind of needs to prove more too. We'll probably get to that later. But their defense, they've shown now that I think that they have the potency and the talent and the depth, especially with all these guys in the secondary that are subbing in and out. They're all good hitters. They're all flying to the ball. I think they have that depth to compete in a 60-minute contest against this Rice option.
Yeah, with how poorly Rice and how they don't want to throw the football. We hadn't talked a lot about like Mark Stampley, who I thought had a great game last week, or Latrell McCutchin, or anything like that. But you mentioned the offense, and 27 points, nothing to sneeze at. They had 3 touchdowns to the air. They only had 9 touchdowns to the air all season last year. Even against an FCS opponent, I think it's fair to say that they've gotten better. But you just wrote a feature last week about Connor Wegman and Stefan Boogie Johnson, the connection they've got. That connection did not come to fruition on the football field a whole lot on Saturday. No completions between the two. I only had down 1 target. I think there was a penalty on the play. As you see it, is this going to be a weekend to kind of get that thing going, or are they comfortable with like, hey, let's get everyone involved. We got Colorado the week after. We can focus on this then.
I keep trying to debate with myself whether Houston's offensive performance was trying to put nothing on film in that Stephen F. Austin game. I mean, it was a pretty bland vanilla offense from Houston, but also your sheer talent alone should probably get you more than 3 touchdowns on Stephen F. Austin. Instead, they had to punt 7 times. But I do think, yeah, you need to get Boogie Johnson definitely more involved. I mean, he didn't have a single catch in that game. He was your top wide receiver last year. And also, looking at the wide receiver production right now, let's see. Amari Thomas had 3 catches. Mekhi Muse had 2. Harvey Broussard had 1. You had 6 completions out of 16 to wide receivers. So I do think that the wide receiver room needs more utilization in general. Houston last year, they didn't really throw beyond 10, 15 yards too often with success. You saw a lot of dump offs to the running backs, a lot of screens to Mekhi Muse, Boogie Johnson, and the receivers. I kind of want to see Houston stretch the offense vertically more. I loved the fact that Connor Wegman's first throw as a Houston Cougar was a deep shot.
Deep shot to Kobe. I thought while that ball was in the air, Steve, I was so excited.
I love the fact that they went bold with that, and that should be a good sign going forward that they don't have the fear of going deep with Connor Wegman. They trust him. They trust him to make those throws. I wish we saw it again that game because he didn't really have any other throws of near that distance for the rest of the game. But I think we might see 1 or 2 of those times this week where he uncorks the old arm and you could see Boogie downfield. You could see Kobe Young, maybe Mekhi Muse getting someone on a go route. We'll see, but the wide receiver room definitely needs more utilization here. But
They
Rice,
ran like a switchy, rubby kind of scissor look that got Muse a jump ball in the end zone. And I like Mekhi a lot. He's also a fantastic kid. I don't know that I'm throwing him a jump ball, and that's just not what I think his strengths are as a 5'8" receiver. I frankly would look back to Tanner Cozell at 6 bajillion feet tall. He's a giant. I wonder had the Kobe connection happened, if they'd have gone deep again, or if that kind of backed him off of it for the rest of the night. Just the way game flow and game script happens. Do you think that you mentioned that like there's a chance they go vanilla again before Colorado? Do you think that they need to test out their gadgets and tools, or should they really just put them in the back pocket?
well, one, I don't know what Slade Nagel really like how much more he can kind of spice this up. I remember watching Tulane's offense in 2023, and it was a very plain offense, but the Greenway had talent to run that plain offense. They had a very good offensive line. They had Mekhi Hughes, who was top 10 in the country in rushing. You had Michael Pratt, a veteran quarterback back there. Now, they never lit teams up with 40 points. They never scored 40 once that entire season. They still churned out 11 wins, kind of playing more of a complementary style offense that was efficient enough to win its game. So I want to see how much Houston can spice things up under Slade Nagel. I'd like to see a little more creativity in the running game. And also, another thing that Houston really has to its advantage offensively is you have a lot of good receivers at the running back position. We know Stacey Snead's capable of it. Jamarian Burnett, holy cow, what a touchdown he had in week
Didn't know
1.
he had it in him. Did not know he had it in him.
I mean, you lose Sanford for the season, which is definitely a bummer. But Dean Connors, former Rice Owl Dean Connors, was second in the FBS last year in receptions among running backs, only trailing Syracuse's LaQuint Allen. In fact, he entered bowl season ranked first among running backs in reception. So I'd like to see how much Houston kind of replaces maybe some of the run with screens to some of the running backs because Rice's front could actually stop this run game. I think that is one thing that Rice's front, with a 345-pound Blake Banish commanding so much attention in the center, and given how Houston's run blocking looked last week, I think that's an area of the game that Rice might actually get an advantage over. So Houston, I would kind of recommend exploring these running backs in more ways than just running the ball.
Let's talk about the trench play and get into real predictions and how those things transition in just 1 second. I'm probably supposed to say this part where you describe we keep our jobs and blah, 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 right? Anyway.